Can you survive a gruesome, desolate RimWorld as the Master Chief? For this video, we will be surviving as the Master Chief with only his armor, weapons, and military survival skills. We shall attempt to survive for 1 year, even though 100 days is a much catchier title. First things first, since we don't have any Moa or Ungoi to turn into alien jerky, we're gonna have to settle for some deer. Unfortunately, since we don't have any of the wonderful UNSC cooks to make us some mashed potatoes and a Pepsi, not sponsored, we'll have to cut down some organic life to cook this beautiful innocent creature we murdered. I had considered making a temporary home out of wood for the night as well, but I thought we would just hunt another deer and drape their mangled pelts around this mountain to form a nice, safe tent for the night. Finally, we cook our first of many yummy shit sandwiches that will have to sustain Chief and his massive spaceman muscles. This is also a good time to mention, I did give him one of those shield pack things that are on his, it's on his back. You can see it when he's cooking. However, I didn't remember to use it at all at any point whatsoever. It never came into play. He does have a shield around his armor though, so it's cool. I think I just put that one on him. I didn't care anymore. Yeah, so whoopsie, sorry about that. Now to building that beautiful bloody carcass tent I mentioned earlier before we take a little snooze. The next day, we awaken to have a nice shit sandwich before building the roof over our bloody carcass tent. At this point, I had decided that probably the best thing that we should start working on would be a freezer, so we could try to stockpile food, thus we won't starve to death, and we could stockpile that and then begin working on other things because food would be taken care of. Before completing our food freezer, Chief decides he's all tuckered out and needs a quick nappy nap. No doubt this exhaustion has been brought on from hauling that massive hog around in his suit. Luckily, though, no one is around to mock him and shout names at him such as tripod, three-leg, huge dong, etc. I think you get the idea. No, but seriously, Chief, you need to wake up. You've been sleeping way too long. You're going to starve to death. Finally, Chief awakens from his cryo sleep to realize that he's in orbit. Wait. I think this is the wrong script. Anyhow, he awakens to build a freezer on an unknown RimWorld. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Just before completing our food freezer, we have a group of disgusting hinge heads who have actually came to visit us. I decided to trade with them, but they had nothing to offer. Filthy creatures. However, they did leave us a beautiful little sombrero, some type of hat, I don't know. Filthy aliens and their disgusting sombreros. Chief finishes up the night with some steel mining. Now, I don't understand how, because he has no pickaxe or anything that can actually mine. He only has firearms, so I assume he's just using his giant metal fist to beat into the rock and knock the steel out, of course. Once again, Chief decides to take a little dirt nap next to his bloody deer carcasses that he made a tent out of, just before getting up and kind of Minecraft Steve styling it and beating the shit out of some trees for wood so that he can continue working on his base and try to set up a proper type of shack, that sort of thing, of course. Something that I failed to take into consideration is the fact that I put the freezer on the inside and we only have a tiny little bedroom slash whatever for Chief, so of course it's sending a crippling heat wave into there, so I had to have him dig out a little tunnel. That way we could actually deconstruct the cooler that we just built like a fool and rebuild it. But at least now, Chief has a proper area and proper tools to cook his shit sandwiches out of the innocent animals on this planet. Then I also decided that maybe murdering innocent animals and the time that takes is insufficient for what we need to sustain ourselves and Chief's massive spaceman body and his giant dong on this RimWorld. So I decided to let him go ahead and plant some rice outside, and hopefully that would help with feeding him and things of the sort, and also stuffing our food freezer so we could move on to other things like the murdering of hinge heads and things of the sort. Speaking of hinge heads and murder, I did also decide that it's time to get some type of defense set up because we should be experiencing some type of raid in the near future. And while we're still on the topic of Sangheli hinge heads, as Chief went to lay down for bed, we did actually have a group of traders who actually came by from a Sangheli faction. They didn't have anything of interest to trade, though, as far as I can remember, so Chief decided to have breakfast and not open his door to the disgusting freaks on the outside. And I got sick of letting Chief sit there in his little tiny cave, so I decided to build a light so he could see, so he could also go and punch the shit out of some rocks and make his tiny cave into a semi-medium sized cave. The next night, we actually had a Sangheli from that friendly faction who keeps trying to be very nice to us and trade and give us gifts and things of the sort. He actually fell from the sky into a lake nearby, so of course, Chief done the only natural and reasonable thing that he could. He decided to go and capture him and try to force him with his giant spaceman muscles and suit and giant dong, of course, to be his friend. Chief decided multiple times to try and discuss with the Sangheli about his giant dong, and of course the Sangheli in jealousy refused to join him because he was extremely jealous of the Chief's third leg. Anyhow, eventually he did break and give in, and though he still believes in his disgusting great journey, he did end up joining us, and now he's our buddy. He's not the Arbiter, of course, but he'll do in the absence of the Arbiter. Regardless of one of us being a split-jaw alien from outer space and the other one being a spaceman from outer space, we did still need to build a heater, that way we don't freeze to death. And just as well, the Chief decided to go piss off a bear so it would charge at him, and he could of course murder it in cold blood, that way he and the alien, the Sangheli, my apologies, could eat it together over their beautiful wood stove that they've installed in their shack. The Chief's bloodlust, however, did not stop at the bear. He decided that an animal that could fight back was a bit much, so he decided once again to go kill some innocents and murder a few elk and things of the sort there. That way he could eat them with his new alien compadre in their beautiful shack, once again over their beautiful wood stove. The next day, we had a group of Sangheli visitors who were actually coming through the area, and their vile appearance really pissed off the Master Chief, so he decided to do the only reasonable thing, of course, and attempt to murder them and take their gear and give to his new Sangheli friend. The alien visitors, however, were not a fan of his plan to murder them, so naturally they attempted to fight back and kill him and take his gear and, wear his skull like a hat on their heads, that sort of thing. But in all seriousness, no joke, I actually attempted to fight with them to murder them and take their gear, and they were actually a lot stronger than I assumed. Those shields that they had on were very difficult to take off, and also shoot at them and try to kill them without getting downed ourselves or dying ourselves. So I had tried to build traps, and we ended up having a shootout with them for quite a while. We ended up not killing any of them except for the one that didn't have power armor or anything. So we didn't get any of that, but at least we got our new alien Sangheili friend some weapons. So we have that at the very least. At the end of the shootout, Chief decided to be a giant pussy with his little alien friend and hide in their little shack in the mountain with their heater and pretend that the aliens they had just attempted to kill were no longer out there. And eventually it did work. The aliens actually ran away. They must have been scared, obviously. That could be the only reason that I could think of. However, shortly thereafter we scared off those disgusting Sangheili's, we had a Kigyar attempt to raid us and take us from behind, and that sort of thing, so of course, naturally, we had to prepare a defense for the one spear-holding Kigyar against our massive spaceman with an assault rifle and our little hinge head with his pistols. Instead of executing the Kigyar, as naturally we should have, I decided to let the Hingehead discuss with him, and the Kigyar decided that he'd much rather be a slave than, some type of stain on the floor, so we enslaved him, and then he became our best friend. We let him clean our shack, and we occasionally let him eat the scraps off the floor when we were done eating our shit sandwiches, and everybody lived happily ever after. Shortly thereafter, we actually got a call from a group of refugees who wanted to join us for a little while until they could regroup with their friends. And of course, Chief, being the humanity lover and nice guy and hero that he is, decided, hey, I'm going to let these refugees stay with us for a while. They can eat our scraps from the shit sandwiches. They can help clean our shack with that disgusting piece of shit Kigyar over there. And everybody will live happily ever after, as mentioned before. Now, Chief, he loved these refugees. He loved them so damn much that he decided to build a table right there in the middle of the shack so that everybody could have a big, nice dinner together, including that disgusting Kigyar. That night, before the table was finished, they planned on, of course, finishing the table tomorrow. Everybody went to sleep, and they were all having beautiful dreams, and everyone lived happily ever after, as mentioned. Only nobody lived happily ever after. This isn't a fairy tale. Those refugees were bullshitting us the whole time. This whole damn time, they just wanted to cut off Chief's dong and his armor and wear them around their necks like a necklace. Those refugees were insane, and they came to murder us. Now, naturally, Chief, being the giant spaceman that he is, with some type of energy shield and a knife and a big weapon like an assault rifle, you would think he'd be able to take these refugees, right? Like a lady with a knife and some type of little refugee hinge head with a knife, right? No, he can't. He gets his ass kicked, and they throw him on the ground and start stomping his head in and breaking his visor, kicking him in the dick and all sorts of things. Lucky for us, though, our friend the Hingehead and our pet Kigyar with his spear and his slave collar decided to intervene and attempt to save Chief before he could be kidnapped by these disgusting refugees. Luckily, they do end up succeeding in this endeavor, and we ended up murdering both refugees in the end, and Chief only was a little screwed up, missing a limb or so, and things of the sort, got his dick kicked. Lucky for us, our hingehead compadre is also an expert in patching up dicks, so he was able to patch up Chief's dick, and, he couldn't walk or anything for a little while, naturally, of course, but we do end up saving his life and that sort of thing. I gotta say, though, those refugees really effed up our cabin here in the mountain. They almost completely burned it down. Well, they did basically burn down all the wooden parts, except for our freezer, of course. Everything else was made of rock and things of the sort, and there's blood everywhere, literally. Everyone's laying in a pool of purple or red blood or some type of ash or rock rubble, things of the sort. I can't believe we almost built a table for those disgusting refugees. Now, in the middle of the night, our disgusting, dumbass pet Kig Yar ended up getting an infection from his beating and ass whooping he took from one of the refugees. So, naturally, of course, we tried to amputate the limb, we tried to heal him with things, and, everything was just kind of messed up, so in the end, he ended up not making it out alive. Now at this point, Chief was able to walk, so of course we decided to try and get our shit together and unite over our dead Kig Yard partner and clean this place up. We did have a mad ibex ram, which of course was not much of an issue for two, hulking space beasts with all sorts of firearms and weapons and things of the sort. And they were very pissed off because, their pet Kig Yar had just died, so they just completely demolished that ibex ram. Now Chief, limping with his one good leg, decided that it was probably time to bury our pet Kig Yar, and he decided to pick him up and try to limp him out to some hole he dug out in the snow next to the lake and give him a proper Christian burial. Chief stood over the grave with his leg and dick both missing from the refugee attack, of course, and decided to mourn his pet Kig Yar. Chief, enraged by the fact that his cock was missing, decided to just lose his shit and attack the hinge head. Now, I don't know if the hinge head started it. Maybe he kind of looked cross at him or tried to smile, and, because of his disgusting mandibles, he maybe took it as an insult or things of the sort. But anyhow, the hinge head had to put him down and, punch him in the place where his cock used to be. Now, Chief ended up getting an infection in his torso, I assume, where the hinge head tried to hit him in the dick and just punched him in the chest. I have no idea. They have different anatomy. Thankfully, though, Chief is a spaceman from the future where things like the flu and COVID-19 and other types of infections are obsolete and they've been eradicated, so his immune system completely demolished the infection. We did also have a nice young hingehead calling from nearby for safety. He had a pack of man-hunting raccoons chasing him. Of course, that's nothing compared to the Covenant, so we accepted and decided to save his life, and in return, he decided to be our best friend. Since the Chief was missing one of his legs that used to be attached, I suppose one of the refugees took it with them when they went to hell. Anyhow, I let the hingehead attempt a surgery on Chief, which failed horribly. I mean, he does only have like 4 fingers and 2 thumbs, so... Later that night, we did also have a Kig Yar with a spear who decided that I suppose he just wanted to be enslaved by us, and so he obviously showed some type of aggression, and we of course counteracted that aggression with an ass beating. Our 2 hingeheads waited silently in the cold that night on his arrival. And just as the snow falls on a cold winter day, he arrived. The ass beating came swiftly, and his stats were actually dog shit, so I left him out in the cold to die, and one of the hingeheads murdered him. We also ended up having a drop pod crash with some wake up. I wasn't really interested in giving it to anyone, especially not the hingeheads. If you've seen those guys on cocaine, they're insane. Anyhow, we decided to just keep it in case we had a trader and maybe we could sell it for a leg or something for Chief. Later on, a group of Kig Yar had came to reclaim their brother that we had so kindly murdered out in the snow. I mean, it could have been much worse. We could have put him out in the lake and let him freeze to death. At least we gave him a warrior's death. Regardless, they were very upset about this and decided to try and take our heads. Luckily, though, we knew the Kig Yar's one and only weakness, a solid bullet to the brain, so we murdered one and the other one scampered off like the pussy he is. Immediately following the Kig Yar, a group of Sangheilies decided to come and raid us. Oh, those poor fools. They'll die just... Is that a Spartan laser? Dude, holy shit, we are so dead. Anyhow, the Sangheilies, in a show of force, decided to attack some type of animal out in the forest with their giant Spartan laser that is definitely a weak and weapon for pussies. We attempted to prepare for their arrival the best we could. We made some traps, had a little pep talk amongst ourselves, but truly, they made quick and short work of us. The Spartan laser ended up blasting Chief's damn arm off, and then the hinge heads fell very quickly, and then the one guy came in and beat the shit out of the Master Chief with a hammer until he was flaccid on the ground and his hopes and dreams were crushed. They also decided to take the hinge heads with him, I suppose, because they were going to try to reinstate them into their culture and into their tribe or something. I don't know how these damn aliens work. We had a man in black come, and I was going to try and get him to save one of the hinge heads as they were, kidnapping them, but I decided that Chief was just so messed up I was going to send him straight over to Chief, try to rescue him and try to save him, and it's a good thing I did because there was a massive fire, of course. Our shack is burnt down for like the 50th time, and, Chief started taking damage and all that great shit, so he came in to save him. I do suppose that this is as good a time as any to also mention that the kind of idea for this challenge, the time frame that I was looking for with surviving as the Master Chief, was to just try and survive. It was going to be 100 days, right, because it's a catchy title, you know what I'm saying? But I decided to just do 1 year because I couldn't put myself through any more of this trauma and tragedy any longer of Chief just getting the absolute shit kicked out of him since he was a hero of my childhood. We also had a quest for paid force weather. I think it was for like cloudiness or something of the sort. And it was, we got some glitter world medicine. I thought, maybe we could use that in a pinch if Chief loses another limb or has some type of major infection, and we could try and use that to our advantage and save him. So I accepted it. Then a group of really pissed off bunny rabbits came by. I don't know why they were upset, but anyhow, our man in black dealt with them swiftly and disregarded them. Now, the man in black actually decided to fix the place up a little bit by repairing it, and he also built a telegram thing that I thought would be the same as a comms console, but turns out it kind of is, and I still need an orbital trade beacon, so I just completely screwed that up. I couldn't trade with anyone. But regardless of my extremely poor planning and understanding of the game in general, he also went out and hunted some innocent animals for food, and then back at home, Chief decided to fix up some sandbags. He's always trying to gear up for war, even when he's a dickless, legless, armless fool with, minimal protection now that his armor's all busted up and looks like it belongs in a scrapyard. Now, earlier, when the Sangheilies attempted to kidnap one of our hinge heads, he actually died in their arms at the edge of the map, so our man in black decided to give him a proper Christian burial. The man in black, being the kind man he is, thought not only about himself and needing to eat, but also about Chief. He thought, hey, that poor dickless vegetable laying there on the ground in that power armor's probably hungry. I'm going to whip up a few shit sandwiches and shove them down his throat hole, and maybe that'll make him feel better. Turns out it did make the Chief feel slightly better as he's laying there in his catatonic breakdown on the ground. You know what else makes him feel better and me feel better? This suffering is over. It's been 1 year since we started this short little challenge, surviving RimWorld as the Master Chief. Yeah, he started out kicking ass, taking names as the super soldier we all know and love, and yeah, maybe now he's an armless, dickless, legless bastard laying out on the ground in a catatonic breakdown in a cave in the snow and rain, and I'm getting all crazy. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this goofy little challenge that we did. If you have, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that junk that everybody else says, and have a great day. Goodbye.